at this time, 5 Pacific, 8 Eastern, every single Saturday night, and I upload new videos 11 a.m. on Wednesday. Next week's video is Catholicism and alcohol, the theology of all of it. Sorry, I have my live stream going here just so I can read the comments, because actually when I'm streaming on my phone, I only see 2 comments at a time and then it goes up, and so I'm unable to read like a lot of the comments, especially if I'm talking about the current topic and everything. So I'm gonna be reading more of the comments in the stream, responding to them. So today I wanted to talk about why people should stop calling bipolar disorder a mood disorder. This is something I hear all the time. I do a lot of research on bipolar. I read a lot of stuff about it. And it's usually not professional studies labeling it as a mood disorder. It's people who have no clue what bipolar is. So unfortunately, the DSM, which is the Diagnostic Statistic Manual of Mental Disorders, so it's the official people who are in charge of psychology, psychiatry, like the experts in the country. In the DSM, they have literally labeled it mood disorder. They've classified it as that. And I think that was a horrible idea. I think that the connotation of mood that exists in the world right now, and this is the updated one too. This is recent. This isn't like, oh, it was written in the 90s or something. This is like a recent label they chose to include. So the current connotation of mood is that you're happy, you're sad, you're angry, you're confused, you're, heartbroken. There's all these different emotions that you feel, fleeting momentary emotions. And so they've labeled bipolar disorder as being about mood, which is completely opposite of the way I've experienced it and the way the other millions of bipolar people in the US and the world experience it. So the reason I hate the mood part so much, which I'm going to explain why it's not mood, is because so many bipolar people do not get diagnosed or get diagnosed way later in life. Like, they've done studies, and on average, it takes seeing 6 different therapists or psychiatrists until someone gets the right diagnosis. So think about that. It's not like you go 1 month, one therapist, next month another therapist, next month psychiatrist, next month other psychiatrist. Like, this is happening over the period of years and years and years when people are seeking help from different mental health professionals. And clearly it's not working because it takes on average 6 different mental health professionals until you get the correct diagnosis. For me, it was 7. Looking back at my life, the amount of therapists and psychiatrists I've seen. And one of the big reasons that people don't get diagnosed is because they don't know what bipolar is. They don't understand the symptoms. They hear people talk about it as a mood disorder and they're like in depression and they don't have a negative mood and they're like, oh, I must not have a mood disorder. This is how depression is described. So something that I tell a lot of people is that it has to do with sleep. That's the #1 signature diagnostic criteria. That's how, even as someone who's on medication and has experienced it for a long time and already has my diagnosis, sleep is the #1 indicator of what episode I'm about to go into. So in depression, people oversleep because their brain, typical brain, is supposed to be in deep sleep for 2/3 of the night and REM sleep, dreaming, for 1/3 of the night. So when a bipolar person is in a depression episode, they are in their REM dreaming sleep for 2/3 of the night and deep sleep for 1/3 of the night. So that's like the very beginning of depression. It's the sleep disturbance. And so if someone who's in depression is sleeping, they're going to need to sleep for 14 to 18 hours to get the same amount of deep sleep as someone not in depression. So that's like how depression starts off. You're sleep deprived all the time. You're physically exhausted as if you have mono. And I never would have described my depression as sad. I never really felt sad. Maybe like 5 months in, I felt sad because I wasn't able to do well in school or work or do that well in maintaining relationships. Like, maybe I was sad, like looking back on 5 months of depression, but in the moment, you're frozen. You don't feel anything. And it's just like a lack of, it's ice. And so that's not a mood. Like, depression is a physical, mental phenomena. shrinking your brain, slowing down your brain, making you physically exhausted. It's like having mono. That's how people describe it, like on the same level, because it's just like complete exhaustion all the time. It's not at all sadness. And a lot of bipolar people in depression, they also experience psychosis, so they hear voices in their head cursing them out, telling them to kill themselves, telling them how to kill themselves. And that has nothing to do with mood. That has to do with hallucination. So mania is similar in that mania is an extreme amount of energy and it's not needing as much sleep. So just like how in depression, the brain flips and you're not in deep sleep enough, in mania, you don't have to get much sleep at all. And it's as if you got so much sleep. And so I've stayed awake for like over, I think 72 hours, maybe it was longer than that without sleeping. And it's like, you're fine. And you even have more energy than usual on like barely any sleep. So that's what mania is. It's just having so much energy, thinking faster. So in depression, your brain is shrinking, your thinking is really slowed down. It's hard to think of words to say in a conversation, to write in a paper for school. It's hard to process what you're reading because everything is super slowed down. Basic decision making is hard. Like when I was in depression and I was at a restaurant with my friends, I always had them order for me because it was so hard looking at a menu and deciding what to order. And it was the same thing. So my second depression episode, which is when I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder. So I remember I was in college at the time, walking into the dining hall, looking at all the options, and it was too hard and stressful thinking of what to eat. And so I was hungry and I would just walk out and not eat a meal because the understanding decision making, it's so hard because the brain is so slowed down. And so none of that has to do with mood. It's a physical thing going on of the brain shrinking, the brain slowing down. And in diagnostic criteria for a depression episode in bipolar, it does talk about how some people, they have like more of like a lowered sadness type thing going on. Like that's an option. Some people can experience that, but a lot of people don't. For most people, it's like ice. And there is a feeling, adhenoia of, I probably mispronounced that, of not experiencing pleasure. So it's like a lack of pleasure, but that doesn't mean just because you lack pleasure that you're sad or you're in a mood. It just means ice. You're not experiencing any mood at all. So I totally don't think bipolar or major depressive disorder too, I don't think they should be called mood disorders because you're ice. You're ice. You don't feel anything. That's not a mood. It's just not a mood at all. So why is it a mood disorder? I will also say though, people who have major depressive disorder, they tend to experience more sadness, like more of an emotional aspect of depression than people with bipolar disorder. And it's actually really cool, the technology they have. You can actually do a brain scan in someone who's having a depression episode and you can immediately tell if they have bipolar disorder or major depressive disorder. So I've actually written to my politicians recently because I think health insurance should cover the brain scan, because the first time someone has a depression episode, if they're bipolar, they'll be like, oh, this person has bipolar disorder, not major depressive disorder. Let's put them on bipolar medication rather than major depressive disorder medication. So yeah, it's so cool. They have the technology. They can like immediately diagnose people, but they don't. Instead, they have psychiatrists and therapists trying to diagnose people. And it takes seeing like on average 6 different professionals throughout your life to get the right diagnosis rather than just being told like, oh, you have depression, or like, oh, you don't fit bipolar criteria. So it's horrible. I don't know why they can't just use the brain scan going on. And then I would say with mania kind of is more of a mood than depression is. But primarily, mania isn't about how you feel, it's about how fast your brain is working. And so, like I was saying, you don't need much sleep and you're full of energy, you have so many ideas, your mind is working very fast, you're physically stronger, which is the effect of other like hard drugs that are illegal. You can, like when I'm working out, I don't really lift things that much, but I guess if I was like helping my friend move in a manic episode, that'd be very useful. But I've experienced at the gym, like if I'm running, I have so much more stamina. I can run faster for longer. I can lift heavier weights in mania. So like with depression, it's a very physical thing. It doesn't have to do with mood. And there are actually people in mania who experience anger rather than happiness, and mania is typically associated with so much pleasure, so happy, like positive mood. And some people in mania just get angry and they try to hide their anger. And so I think even with mania, calling it a mood disorder, it just makes it sound like, oh, if I'm manic, I'm really happy. And it's like, no, some people in mania don't feel happy because they have the anger type of mania instead. And feeling happy isn't necessary for a manic diagnosis. So yeah, I don't know what's the deal with the American Psychiatric Association. Like, I don't understand why they had the word mood. And I can think of one example. I don't want to talk about it because it would create a whole conversation, but in the catechism, there's one part where they're talking about a specific ethic and they use a word that has a totally different connotation today than how it's intended to. And I wish they hadn't done it that way. But with the catechism, it was written like years and years and years ago, whereas the updated DSM was written very recently. And so it's like zero excuses for using a word like mood to describe things that have to do with how fast or slow your brain is working, how your sleep is working, and how energetic you are. Like, it's not emotional. It's not an emotional thing. It's physical and mental. So really, really annoys me. And I feel like in America in general, people are very like overemphasize the importance of emotions. And so I think already Americans are going to be like, oh, if I don't feel a certain way, that's not a certain disease. And so I think, especially in the US, we just shouldn't be using the word mood like that because we already overemphasize emotions and understanding things. So yeah, I read this all the time. A lot of people are like, bipolar is having a depressed mood and a manic mood. And it's like, depression isn't a mood. Why are you saying that? Especially in bipolar, depression and bipolar disorder, not a mood. So I'm just always looking out for ways to stand up for people in my community, and it's just heartbreaking to me how long it takes for people to get diagnosed. Like I said, I saw 7 different, like throughout my life. I think my first psychiatrist or therapist I saw was like when I was a freshman in high school, and then I went more often for various reasons. And so it took me seeing 7 until I got my diagnosis. And even when I got my diagnosis, I fought for my diagnosis. I looked back at my life, I did a lot of research, and I was like, that's a hypomanic episode. That's a depression episode. That's a hypomanic episode. That's a depression episode. These, you know what I mean? Like, I looked back on the past like 3 years of my life, and I was like, oh my goodness, I have bipolar disorder, and the jet lag from whichever coast I was flying to triggered all my episodes. So I went to a psychiatrist about it after I'd had hypomanic episodes and was experiencing like very clear like manic behavior, like type 1, and I went to him and he's like, no, you don't fit the criteria for bipolar. So I forced him to put me on bipolar meds, which he did. He gave me a mood stabilizer. So after that, my next psychiatrist, I explained my life to her, and she's like, yeah, you're right, you are bipolar. But yeah, it's like if I hadn't done like a ton of research and really thought through my life, I would still not be diagnosed, like 100%. Just because the way that I understood mania is just like so different. And I think especially with bipolar 2, where people have less intense manic episodes and mostly depression, like it's so easy to not know that you're hypomanic because our society totally rewards mania because you're more productive, you are more energetic, you're stronger, you have more vision for your career, you're more social. Like, at least in our country, especially where we're like total workaholics, like mania in smaller forms, hypomania is seen as like such a positive thing. And yeah, people view it in a great way. It improves your life. And It does cause progressive brain damage. So much brain damage occurs in mania and hypomania. So it's horrible. It's very unhealthy. It's so bad long term. But yeah, people don't get diagnosed. So you should do what I do, write our politicians, tell them to mandate that health insurance companies have to cover the brain scan when someone's in a depression episode so they can be immediately diagnosed. I've been doing... Is it going? It doesn't say that it's going. Okay, we're back on. So someone said, DMC says, anxiety is huge now. Our brains are not evolving fast enough for the technology. Yeah, it's really interesting to me to see comparisons of how mental illness symptoms are manifesting in different countries, because it totally depends on the country. Even like within Europe, it's different depending on the country. So I think it's really important to have conversations about how our cultures are affecting that. And I don't think technology is necessarily the problem. I think it's the way we're using technology and the way it's affecting us. So I think it's really important for each country to really like dig into those statistics and be like, what part of our country is causing this? Because I think the most really sad thing is mental illness symptoms manifesting in children, because typically they start manifesting in young adulthood. And I was reading this stat, the US compared to some European countries, it's like 4 times more likely for children to have bipolar disorder symptoms. And I was like shocked, like why in our country is it such higher? And so I think we really need government officials, maybe, I don't know if the government would be the best place, but you know what I mean? Like some high government organization in charge of health in the general country should be looking into all these trends and be like, what can we do to change it? So DMC says, I'd advise everyone to go on a social media detox and have good, positive friends. So I think it totally depends on what accounts you're following on Instagram. I follow a lot of vegan accounts, Catholic accounts. I follow some accounts that just have like sweet, heartwarming stories every day, and friends, of course, and then other influencers. So I never feel insecure going through Instagram, and it makes me really happy. I would say I don't spend that much time on it because I think it's kind of can waste some time during the day, but my experience is extremely positive. So I think it depends on if you're in a good mindset or not. Like if you're someone who tends to get very envious of other people, and then you go on social media and you follow a lot of models, or you follow a lot of people who have this like, they are showing their family and it's like social media perfect family, something like that. Like if you're already in a negative state of envy, I think it could manifest through Instagram. But I feel like if you're in a really healthy space, it shouldn't affect you at all. And I think if it is, you should just unfollow those accounts and follow other accounts that make you feel uplifted. Like thinking about vegan accounts. So I follow PETA, which is like a huge vegan organization, actually started by a Catholic, and they do amazing work in bringing awareness to animal cruelty in so many forms, not just the meat and dairy industry, but also research in labs that they totally are abused, stuff like that. And it's hard looking at it because it's like, it's really sad footage and it's heartbreaking. But also I follow another vegan account called Veg News that just shares positive vegan things going on, like with new restaurants and animals being saved, like all of these things. So I think it's important to have a balance. I think it's really cool being made aware of like injustices in the world, but you really have to balance that out. So I'm really careful with what news I read just because I'm a very empathetic person, and it just like, I'll cry at things. So I know for me, Instagram isn't a problem, but certain news is. So I have to be really careful and like check myself to make sure I'm taking care of my emotional health. Like you were saying with evolution, I think not just generalized anxiety disorder, but I honestly think everyone can feel overwhelmed sometimes by all the violence going on in the world. And it's like a new thing where we immediately can know every time there's a terrorist attack and a shooting and extreme suffering in other countries, like we can read it on our phone immediately. So many different countries who are hurting, and that's not normal. Like it's completely a new thing. And God did not create our brains to care about everyone. Like, we just can't do that. And so I think it's really important to, step back and not read details of things. Like, if there is a horrible terrorist attack or a country is really suffering, like, yes, you can read like the headline, but if it's something that's gonna really like destroy you emotionally because you're so empathetic, like, I honestly don't think good is gonna come out of reading it so in depth. So yeah, I honestly think news can be more harmful than Instagram, just because it's like, it's so sad and it's overwhelming and we can't process it. We haven't caught up to be able to process it. Austin says, I have Asperger's and bipolar. Okay, I'm trying to make my computer so I can see the chat more. Got it. Okay, I had it in the wrong setting. Joe says, good evening, Lizzie. Good evening. I hope you're having a good night and had a productive, beautiful, and relaxing day. I should not have said productive first. That's like my American coming out so strong. Okay. Heather is talking about diet can have a huge effect on mental health. I'm sure that works for some people, but I actually get annoyed when people tell me that, because diet is not going to change bipolar disorder. And it's like pretty annoying when people are like, oh, you should go off your meds, you should try aromatherapy, you should try keto diet, you should try prayer. And it's like, I was born with certain genetics and then the epigenetics happened. And so there's literally nothing I can do to get rid of those genes and to get rid of my bipolar. So I'm sure with some things, maybe like situational depression, situational anxiety, maybe. I mean, I've actually never met someone who diet helped their mental illness symptoms. So I don't know, I'm sure it exists, but if you literally have genetics for it, it's like, what is diet gonna do? Like, you can't change your genes. Your epigenetics are, then they become set. So Lex said, what are we talking about? I just joined. So I was talking about bipolar disorder and defining it as a mood versus not a mood, and why depression especially, it isn't feeling sad, it's being completely frozen, it's feeling physically exhausted all the time, sleep being messed up, and mania is about being stronger, thinking faster, not a mood, not for the major symptoms. Liam says, evolution is real, Lizzie. You're a good, honest, beautiful person. I'm glad you think I'm honest. I try to be very open, and I don't think I'm a different person online versus in person. The only thing I will say is I think YouTube makes you be like the most energetic version of yourself. And maybe for some YouTubers, they just don't have an energetic personality, so it's like completely fake. But for me, I'm definitely an extrovert. I definitely have a lot of fun. I'm very happy. I'm passionate. I'm energetic. And so it's pretty easy to like tap into that part of my personality. But definitely sometimes, like if I'm having a hard day and then like I'm filming right after, you are kind of faking the emotions. But my experience with emotions is that if you fake it, it changes you. So like smiling, it affects your neurotransmitters. So if you're really sad and then you're like going through your day and someone's like, oh, hi, how are you? You know, like you're at the grocery store or something and you're like, oh, I'm great, how are you? Like smiling makes you happy. And so faking your facial expressions is actually a great way to get by. And one of my best friends was actually saying this is a good reason to have acquaintances in your life, because people who you're not completely honest to but can still socialize with, if you're having a bad day or really sad about something, like you can fake it and act happy, and that actually makes you feel happy. So good tip. That's what really helps me a lot. Lucy Wynne Jones says, hi Lizzie, I think I developed bipolar after a flight to a country in the East before COVID. Yeah, 100%. That can trigger the episodes. And actually, my first hypomanic episode was when I was 18, a freshman in college. And mine's actually flipped, so I'll tell you how it's supposed to be. But for mine, I go manic when I go East Coast to West Coast. And I go depression when I go West Coast to East Coast. So most people, like the research shows that people get depressed going East to West Coast and go into mania going West Coast to East Coast. So I feel so crazy. I'm like I've literally, when I've read about it, I'm like, am I wrong? Like, was I actually depressed then? And I'm like, no. For me, East Coast, West Coast manic, West, East depressed. So it's very interesting because I was living in Florida for high school and then I went to California for college. So if I stayed in Florida for college, I wonder if I never would have had bipolar episodes at this point, you know, because the jet lag triggers it so much. But I mean, eventually bipolar is supposed to come out in like late teens, early 20s. So it probably would have come out anyways. Maybe it would have come out later, but I mean, that's how it turned out. The jet lag really affects episodes, and therapists, sorry, my friend just called me. That's something that psychiatrists and therapists, I feel like, should ask, like, when was your last flight? And then, you know, see if it's right after affecting emotions. So I don't get it. Okay, Vince, thank you for the donation. Hey, Lizzie, how are you? I was at a wedding yesterday at an old Catholic church, and it made me think of you. Aw, by the way, my crush is sending me Snapchats, and I'm one of the only people she talks to. Is this a good sign? She might like me. I mean, my big thing is not stressing over whether or not someone likes you, but just opening up to people and being genuine and having fun together. Like, obviously, you don't want to lead people on and play them, but I definitely think that people can like overthink it and they're like, are they into me? Why are we hanging out? What does this mean? And my thing is just like, be chill and get to know people. Don't be like, are we dating or not? Like, when you start talking to someone, you know what I mean? Like, just get to know them. And so view it as really chill. And then if it turns out they don't share feelings, it's not awkward, you can still be friends. So, I mean, eventually, like, if you're consistently talking on the phone really late and for really long, or like messaging each other a ton over like weeks and months, like, obviously, like, eventually, you know, like, be like, okay, so do we have feelings for each other? But right away, I wouldn't stress about it. Just be yourself. And I mean, if you are overthinking it, then it's like, it probably won't work out. You know what I mean? If you're trying to like be a certain way, like, just be yourself and be chill. Okay. Lex, I don't know what you mean by that. Yeah, I don't know what you mean about coping with emotions and being faithful. I do one-on-one Zoom sessions. You can email me if you're interested in that. LizziesAnswers@gmail.com. But I would also like to answer in the live stream if you'd like, if you want to talk about it more. Yeah, Heather's saying getting sleep is important. Yeah, having a great sleep schedule, like a consistent sleep schedule, is like the most important thing for bipolar besides medication. So it's medication, sleep, and then exercise. Cardio is like the most important. Mr. D says, good evening. Hi, how are you guys? Sorry, I'm reading your comments. Vince says, starting in my soul again, Lizzie. I don't understand what that means. Yeah, but lots of things can trigger bipolar episodes. I know for me, my junior year, when I developed my second depression episode, which was like very severe and got diagnosed, my first depression episode was for a few months and I didn't know I was in depression. I was just like exhausted all the time. It wasn't that bad. But my second depression episode was super bad. And what were we talking about? Were we talking about sleep? Was I talking about how... Oh. It wasn't triggered by anything. I was in a hypomanic episode and then it randomly flipped. And so nothing caused it. And so people are always like, oh, what caused it? Like, were you in a bad mental space? What was sad that was going on in your life? And like, my life was amazing. I had incredible friends. I was having so much fun in school. I was doing my YouTube a lot. And so like, it wasn't caused by anything. And so, yeah, just randomly flipped. The switch goes off and it changes to depression. No one is talking about atypical depression. Vince says sleep is one of my favorite things to do. I love getting enough sleep. Lucy says, if there was a permanent cure for bipolar, would you take it? So I don't know what you mean by that. We would have to have a really long conversation defining what you mean, because bipolar is caused by genes and then it's kind of set in stone by epigenetics. So, which is very interesting because identical twins do not both have bipolar 100% of the time. It's way more likely, but the epigenetics really seal the deal with whether or not you'll develop it. And so you can't change your genes and the way they're manifesting through the epigenetics. Like, you can't do anything about it. So it's like, you would change my genes from birth. I don't think I would want my genes changed from birth. I would be a totally different person. Like, I don't want that. And it's weird too, like, some people who are, if you're related to someone who's bipolar, you're more likely to have unipolar depression. And so it's like, even in family members of bipolar people, they have bipolar traits. Like, they're more creative, they're more likely to be in depression, they're more empathetic. Like, they have one of the bipolar genes, but then bipolar people have like all of the bipolar genes, you know? So yeah, it'd be really difficult to cure. Someone actually was asking me on Instagram if I could get to a point where I wouldn't need to be medicated. And if that was something where I'm like seeing a professional prayer person healer, I think we have those in Catholicism. I don't know what they're called. But if I were to go to them and we could do some like miracle thing, and in the moment I no longer needed my bipolar medication, it worked in the same way my bipolar medication worked, I wouldn't do that, because if it stopped working at some point, it's just like not worth it. Like, if you go into one manic episode, you can spend like $10,000, cheat on your significant other, buy a plane ticket to France, quit your job. You know what I mean? Like, you can do like one day of mania can ruin your life. And so for me, it's like, if I was offered like a prayer apostolate cure, like, how do you know it's gonna last, you know? But I mean, if it was some miraculous thing where I literally spoke to God, if I had a vision, I probably wouldn't trust it though. I'd be like, this is a manic episode. But, you know, if you could know 100% that it could be cured, all the symptoms could be cured, but you have the same genes, I don't even know if that's enough though, because it's like, I've already increased my chances of getting dementia, cardiovascular disease, like a lot of types of cancer. If you're bipolar, you're like way more likely to get them. So I guess if I could get rid of my bipolar, I would I would undo the brain damage, I would grow my brain back how it was pre-depression, and I would fix my body so that I wouldn't have long-term effects. So if that was possible, I would totally do that. So I'm more worried about the brain damage than anything else. I've been doing a ton of research on it lately, because bipolar people live like on average 15 years less than non-bipolar people. So, well, they say 9 to 20 years. So I don't know why they just don't do an average, but that's how the researchers decided to do it. Okay. Ephesus of Corinth, I have schizophrenia. He says, difference between mental illness and mental disorder. That's an interesting thing. He says mental illness is like a disease to the brain. Mental disorder leads to a chaotic life. Yeah, I think it honestly just depends on how you're defining things. I've seen certain things in DSM. Like, one of the things is alcohol use disorder. I would not call that a mental illness. I call that a mental disorder, even though it's still caused by genetics. So I think it depends on how people are defining the terms, and it can change from person to person. So, oh my goodness, there's like a little bug in the room again. Last live stream, or it might have been the one before, there was like a fly in my room, and I thought it was a bee for the longest time, and some people like saw it like in the shot as well. So one of the funniest moments for me in a live stream is there was like this inside joke in the live stream back in like 2019. I was wearing like big lashes and I was close to the camera, and someone's like, you have spiders in your eyes. And it was like an inside joke in the live stream. So then next, like the same person was like, there's a spider in the shot. And I was like, oh, haha, my eyelashes, you guys are trying to trick me. But then there was like literally a bug on camera, and I don't know how, but I don't know how I didn't see it. But anyways, it was in the literal background, and everyone's like, no, 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 it's a spider, it's a spider. And it turned out to be a real spider. Wow. I absolutely hate bugs. Okay, Ephesus says, mental illness is like trauma. Mentally or physical diseases, the brain. For example, experiencing something dramatic that you now you have to avoid. I would disagree with that, because when mental illness starts, it's not immediately trauma to the brain. Like, I think a lot of the brain damage and stuff happens gradually, like once you begin experiencing a depression episode. I know for me, it was kind of gradual. My first one was, it's so hard to know because I didn't know at the time that I was bipolar, so I wasn't, like thinking through all the episodes and how all the symptoms were affecting me. But yeah, I would say for depression, at least, the brain doesn't just like immediately shrink. Like, it happens very gradually. So that's my experience though. Vince says, is this YouTube or a therapy session? I've made like over 70 videos about bipolar and depression, so it is kind of like therapy. Lady says we can't for legal reasons. I don't know what that means. Cat Lady, how can you explain how prayer candles work and how to use them? I'm probably going to make a whole video on this eventually, just because I was really confused about prayer candles. Like, if a Catholic says, oh, like, I'll light a prayer candle for you, I was like, why don't you just pray for me? Like, what do you mean light a candle? So a big reason that we do it is that it's like a metaphor of our prayers going up to heaven. So it's really cool because it's like, as the candle burns, there's like smoke going up. So it just reflects our prayers going up to God. So that's the main thing to understand in it. And it's really cool. Like, you can get prayer candles of certain saints, or like at a lot of churches, a lot of Catholic churches, there'll be like a statue and then underneath it prayer candles, and so you can ask that saint to pray for you, and then the smoke going up from the candle is their prayers their prayers to God in heaven. And so since they're in heaven, they have time to pray for us all day, and so their prayer continues as the smoke is going up. Not to say they stop praying for you when the candle burns out, but it's kind of like, that's the essence of it, which I think is really cool. And that's probably my favorite part of Catholicism, how it really like meshes with the physical world. Like, the sacraments have to do, with oil, water, bread, wine. It's like our interactions with God are not just in this intellectual, mental state, but like we can feel them and experience them. And so candles are really, really cool to think of prayers that way. So yeah, I love prayer candles. So cool. In California, we can get them at Target and the dollar store. Other places, it's like pretty hard to find them. So I guess if there's like more Catholics in your area, but you could also like call your local store and be like, can you start stocking prayer candles? I'll buy them. My mom used to do that so much growing up. If she wanted a certain product at the grocery store, she would talk to the manager and it would work a lot of the time. So just ask your local store. Chris the Mormon says, have you ever taken Vraylar for bipolar? Yeah, I was on it for about 2 years. I recently went off it just because my health insurance no longer covered it. And so we were kind of like, do we fight to stay on the medicine or do we not? And because your psychiatrist can write a letter to the insurance company and try to get it, but because there were other bipolar medications that were way cheaper, she was like, I don't think we could win against the insurance company, so I just chose to go off of it, and I increased my dosage of Seroquel, which is another antipsychotic. So because of that, we're like, I'm already on an antipsychotic, I'll probably be fine. And I was on 6 milligrams, and I found that I didn't know at the time because COVID was happening, and so I wasn't like going out and socializing with people I didn't know, but I realized looking back that it like really made me more shy and like numbed my personality, and I wasn't as outgoing and confident and extroverted as I usually am. And so I'm kind of glad I went off, and I think I could have just lowered my dosage. But it was one of those things where I realized looking back, because once I went off, I was like, oh wow, like I'm not a shy person. This was just affecting me. But I mean, like, I would rather be a shy person than experience a manic episode. So, I mean, it wasn't that bad, but I think since there's so many different antipsychotics available, like, you could try other ones. But yeah, I really, really liked it a lot. It super helped. I was feeling like very disconnected from reality. I don't know how to explain it, but like time seemed to be going by. Like, it's so hard to describe this because I haven't experienced it for a couple of years. I feel like we don't have language to describe a lot of bipolar symptoms, but I would say like I had like a ton of memory loss all the time, and when I would think back on like a day, it felt like a week, and I felt like I couldn't connect emotionally with other people. And I was kind of like, I felt so close to God, but like couldn't connect with regular people. I don't know if that makes sense, but it was just like, I wasn't in reality. So Raylar really helped a lot. Chris says, I am on it now. Did you just start going on it, or have you been on the dosage for a while? It gave me some pretty bad side effects going on. I was like so dizzy and almost passed out and like super hot and everything. So the dang brothers, I came late. Well, you came at a perfect time because it's been 40 minutes, so we're not talking about the main topic anymore. So we're more like doing a Q&A. Chris says yes last month. How is it affecting you? I really liked how it affected me. I would say I have a positive view of like all my bipolar medications because they all have worked on me really well. Before I was diagnosed bipolar, I was on like an antidepressant called Wellbutrin that did literally nothing. But I feel like all my other medications have done something. You know, like they might not have done it perfectly, but like at that time in my life, they really saved me from so much pain and trauma. So even though I choose to go off some, I think they're amazing. I'm actually going to go off Seroquel, which is also called quetiapine soon, just because it causes brain damage apparently. So I'm going to do more. That was just one study I read, but there's other bipolar meds that actually cause neurogenesis rather than causing brain damage. So Vince says, if I can't come to your wedding, can I send you and Trevor a nice gift? Yeah, I'm going to put our wedding registry online, so if you guys want to give us a gift, that'd be beautiful. I don't know what we're gonna have on our wedding registry because, yeah, I don't know. Like, a lot of people put like very like niche cooking things, and I'm like, I don't know, like I don't bake all the time, you know? So I don't know what to put on a wedding registry, but I think we'll come up with something. Patrick says, have you ever written a letter to the Pope? No, I keep forgetting. I literally wrote down that I want to write a letter to him and Pope Benedict. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send Pope Benedict a picture of him with the cats. I don't know if you guys know this iconic picture, but it's like him with kittens. And I'm pretty sure it's photoshopped, but I'm like printing it out. I'm going to put it on my wall. And so I want to send it to him and like thank him for, because I read some of his writings and everything. And I wasn't Catholic when he was Pope, but you know, I'll be like, thank you so much for ministering and serving our church, and send him the picture and be like, this is the most iconic picture of you. I hope he'll think it's funny. Okay. Lady Revengeful says, I'm frustrated that God put me in a situation to not have more kids. So you're not able to have more children. I know that can be really, really hard. Some of the people I follow on YouTube have talked a lot about infertility and how it's affecting them. And I know it can just be so, so heartbreaking. And miscarriage is such a big thing too. So many people I follow have been open about their miscarriages. I feel like before it was kind of something that like people wouldn't talk about, and they felt like it wasn't appropriate to, but now women are being so open about it, and it's like 1 in 4 women experience it, so it's very, very normal for Alexa, stop. That's to remind me to play my brain game called Elevate. It's like math and grammar and reading comprehension and stuff, and it's supposed to grow your brain. So I have to do it for my neurogenesis. So I hadn't done it for a long time, so now I have her remind me at a certain time every night so I can play it. And it really, really, like, I was solving a problem today, and I was like, because I was doing math last night, it put me in such a good headspace. So, yeah, anyways, so many people I follow have talked about infertility and miscarriage, and it's so heartbreaking. Several people I follow, they've talked about how like a year later, it's still so traumatic and heartbreaking, their miscarriage that they had, because it is a real person and they experienced that as they were part of the life force contributing to that life. And so it's like so heartbreaking when that ends. And I think a lot of people bury their baby and they name their baby and all of these things, which I think is really helpful to help you grieve and mourn the baby. So, and then hopefully they'll be able to meet their baby in heaven, which would be so beautiful. So Vince says, my mom had 2 miscarriages. Yeah, I hope I don't have a miscarriage because it's so heartbreaking hearing people talk about it. Heather Green says, my mom passed out for a moment this afternoon. She sweated throughout the night, was just getting up to get a late breakfast. She's had body aches yesterday. She got something with sugar to replenish. She tested positive for remove so I don't get demonetized. And will need to stay hydrated and rest. Prayers needed. Rest of us are doing okay. Stepdad slightly improving. Half-sister lost smell, but nothing more. I've been fine. I'm glad that you guys are mostly doing okay. I know it's so sad how it's still affecting so many people, and not having smell thing is something I've heard so many people have been experiencing. One of the guys in my Bible study, his dad just got it, and that's been one of his symptoms. So yeah, I'm so sad that you have it, that your family is experiencing it. You're definitely in my prayers. I hope you guys are feeling better, and I'm glad that you guys can take care of each other throughout all of it. Patrick says, it's interesting that Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI had a sister who was not married, laywoman, and a brother who was also a priest. So practically the family line discontinued. That's so interesting. I mean, who cares? Like, I know a lot of people are like into family line and stuff, but like, I've never really cared about it. So, and I mean, my parents had me and my sister, that's it. So like our last name is ending or something, and like, who cares? So yeah, I don't know. Some people get very attached to it, and I'm like, I don't care. Okay. Like, if I was not able to have any children naturally, I would just be like, okay, I'll adopt. Like, I wouldn't be upset about it. And yeah, my fiance would. We've talked about it. But yeah, I just like don't care. And maybe like when I'm married, if I like want to have children naturally and I can't, maybe that would be sad in the moment. But from like an intellectual perspective, like I wouldn't be upset by it. But maybe I would be disappointed in the moment. I don't know, but then you adopt children and you have children. So I don't think it would be sad, but I totally understand that a lot of people do feel sad about it. I think it's a very natural thing that God created in us to want to have children and procreate, which is so beautiful. So I know it can be heartbreaking for people. I don't want to invalidate your experiences. I'm just saying that my experience is I wouldn't be that upset. Okay. DMC says, I love the smell of incense at Mass. I know, it's like the best thing ever. And that's what I was saying about candles, how the smoke is going up. It's the same with incense. Our prayers are going up to God, which is all in Revelation. Raphael says, I use Seroquel, it knocks me out. Yeah, it helps me to sleep too, but I was reading an article recently that it causes brain damage. And that was just one article, so do your own research. But I'll probably make a video about it when I go off my meds and kind of explain my methodology and everything that I've read and stuff. Lady Ravenfell, how do you find your patron saint? So I don't know how to answer this question because mine came extremely naturally. So if you like are not reading a book or something and like happen upon someone, I don't know what to tell you. I think people research like an interest they have or an experience they've had in their life. And if they like relate to that, that could be their patron saint. But yeah, I get this question all the time and I'm like, I have no idea how to answer this question. So I'm not the good person to ask. Raphael. Yeah, so here's the thing. So not being manic, like preventing mania is amazing because you don't get brain damage. And so I think their thinking is that the brain damage you get from Seroquel, you would get even more brain damage from being manic. And so they're like, it's a great trade-off because the brain damage is so much less from Seroquel compared to if you're in a manic episode. But there's so many bipolar medications, so get on a different one. I know Lamictal had really good studies, and lithium has had like so many good studies on it, which is annoying because it's like one of the older ones, so it has weird side effects, but I might go back on lithium. I'm doing a ton of research on it, so we'll see. But that one has really good rating. I keep saying ratings because we're always like buying products, so like the reviews, not reviews, the studies of the medications. The studies have said that lithium and Lamictal are very good. Okay. Chris says Seroquel made me feel like a zombie and Guiadon made me super depressed. Yeah, so I think Seroquel didn't make me feel like a zombie just because I was on a low dosage of it. So I was on like 300 milligrams, and now I'm on 400. I've heard people go up to like 700. So I think that's why I didn't feel like that. You might just have been like on too high of a dose of it. Raphael says, lithium didn't work for me. I had an episode once with lithium, so the doctor changed my meds. Yeah, I would not be on that alone because when I started it, it like lessened my manic symptoms, but not totally. So what I would do is be on Lamictal, lithium, and then an antipsychotic because both of them are just mood stabilizers. So yeah, and I'm fine with being on an extra medicine. It's like $10 extra a month, like totally fine. And if the lithium does neurogenesis, just like by being on it, I'm like, yes, definitely would be that. Okay. And I've been on 3 medications for most of my bipolar, so I'm fine with that. Google account, hi, how's your night going? Mimi says, how do I find your theology book favorites? So I have an Amazon playlist of it here. Let's see. Lizzie, can I access it from my account? Lizzie's list, is that it? No. Huh. Anyways, I'm gonna go on one of my YouTube videos and find the link and send it to you. I make commission off of this, so I have a lot of little lists of folders from videos. So I've made several videos, like I did like a morning routine video and I mentioned a lot of products in it. So I just gave the Amazon link so everyone can find it. So that's one of the ways YouTubers make money, from Amazon links. And I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong, but anything you buy after you click the link, I think I make commission on, because it shows like a itemization of which products you're getting commission from. And some of the books weren't on my list. And so I was like, oh, this is great. Anytime someone clicks the link, then I make some commission. And it's like pennies, but when people buy things, you know, over time, like I think I get like $15 to $20 a month from it, which is great because I don't even have to really do anything. Okay, theology books. Oh, here we go. Share your storefront. Okay, here we go. Okay. Unfortunately, I can't just do like amazon.com/shop/LizziesAnswers. Super weird. Okay, I'm gonna put my favorite theology books. I'm gonna put it in the chat. Yeah, it's super weird. You have to have this like really weird like long link thing. So cool. The link sent. So let me know if you guys could access it. And while we're here, I'll also link my book, Top Theology Books to Read. So here, my video, let me write that down real quick. My video, Top Theology Books to Read. Cool. Chris says, what is your favorite nail polish color? So the past 2 times of getting my nails done, I've done yellow, which is so weird because for like 2 years I did pink, blue, so like hot pink, blue, and the blue I would either do like a light blue, which is like my favorite color, or like vivid, like classic blue, not classical blue. So yeah, the past 2 times, well, okay, I did purple in like June, and then I did yellow, and then I love the yellow so much that I did it twice. So these are like ridiculously long nails. I should have gotten them shorter, but I was like, no, I love them long. So Raphael, well, have a good night, Lizzie. Wish I could stay and chat, but I have to go to morning mass because I work in the afternoon tomorrow. Still keeping you in my prayers. Oh, well, have a good night. I hope you have a really good time at mass. I'm glad you're going to bed early so you get to be there. Chaya says, are there any non-Catholic writers you still read? Definitely with fiction and philosophy. I think that absolutely, it's so amazing reading theology, but I feel like it's not all there is in the world with knowledge. And so I think it's important, maybe not important, but I do think it's great to access other worldviews. Raphael, thank you so much for the donation. Blessings to you and your family. Okay. Patrick says, I think Lizzie now is more interested in the mystical side of Catholicism, for example, the saints, because she basically finished off the knowledge part. That's very interesting. I wouldn't phrase it like that. I would not phrase that you could finish off the knowledge part, just because there's like so much to learn about with the philosophy and theology. But I do kind of agree with that sentiment that when it comes to like basics of apologetics, I've discussed so many things. And so I definitely want to start talking, if you define it as the mystical part, I definitely do want to talk more about Lives of the Saints. But like one of the videos that I'm working on right now is the history of fasting before receiving the Eucharist. So that's very interesting topic. I complain a lot about how I think it's so lame that people are like, we receive the Eucharist at the end of Mass, so I'll eat up until 5 minutes before Mass begins. And I'm like, you're totally missing the point. So I think it's really cool to look to the Middle Ages and beyond, and earlier, how there was like a fast from midnight until Mass in the morning. So that's a fun video. Patrick, have you ever finished the Summa? Who has finished the Summa? I'm sure someone has, but yeah, it's ridiculously long. I don't read it like cover to cover. I don't own it, but when I am doing videos, I'll Google Summa and the topic, and New Advent, which is my favorite website. It's like a Catholic website. So it'll show like each page of the Summa. So it'll go right to like, you know, a page. It's really small, and him just talking about the topic. So it's really cool because I think it'd be kind of overwhelming to read the Summa cover to cover. So I appreciate reading on specific topics. He's very straightforward. I really like the format. It's not like you're constantly lost in jargon and stuff. He just like lays it out like philosophy arguments, which is super cool. So I really like how it's accessible to everyone. Fatima, have you ever read from Vatican II? Yes, I read some of the articles for I read some of the documents. My video I made, Are All Protestants Going to Hell? That video I quoted from in the video, because that was where the church was very like explicit in talking about it. So personally, lots of run-on sentences. That just might be the English translation. It might not be that bad in other languages, but I was like not a fan of whoever wrote it. I thought it was very difficult to understand, and like I don't know how to describe it, but I'm like physical about writing. So like when I read writing, it's like I breathe with the commas and I breathe with the periods, and it's like I'm reading it, and it's like so stressful and difficult to like comprehend. And I just think you need to, like, each sentence should be 3 to 4 sentences. So yeah, like I was able to understand it, but it was like not great. So whoever wrote it, don't like it. Okay. Lady Revenfell, books recommended for someone curious about Catholicism. So I just linked 2 in the chat, so I'll link it again. So my theology book recommendations. Recommendations. Okay, why can't I spell this word? What is going on? Isn't it so annoying when there's certain words? That's exactly how I spelled it. What is going on? Reco. And then, oh, okay, I had an extra C. Okay, I linked it, and then I'm also gonna link my Amazon. Okay, is that giving me the link? Let's see. Nope, it's not linking it. Let me see. Oh, here we go, okay. Control C, Control V. My theology book. And then I linked my Amazon shop that has a ton of books on it. And if you want to know like a summary of the books and everything, then you can watch the video. I used to have something on my website. I think I might have removed it at one point when I rebuilt my website. But I had like theology book recommendations. Is it there? It's not there. Okay, I should put it back up because it's written all the way. But I give like little summaries of like a ton of books and everything. So okay, we're back. Fatima, will you visit Mexico for your honeymoon? We're actually going to Rome for our honeymoon. Mexico has the most beautiful beaches and then of course churches as well. And my fiance is like not a beach person. So I feel like if we went to Mexico, it would be like church art stuff and beach. And he just like doesn't care about the beach. So I definitely go there with friends rather than him. So I'm really, really happy to have friends who are like super into the beach because like my fiance is never going to be that person. So Patrick, have you ever read Theology of the Body by John Paul II? I've read a lot of things about it. I haven't just like read it cover to cover, but I do know a lot about it. I am and beach church. Yeah, I hope people don't get confused by that, but it's just like Mexico is such a beautiful country, and I feel like if you go there, you're gonna do like beach vacation and church tourism. DNC, Love and Responsibility is a classic book by John Paul II. So the person who wanted book recommendations, there's another one. DMC says the life of Sister Faustina is inspiring as well, and the devotion to the divine mercy she brought to the church given her by Jesus. Aww. Chris the Mormon says, I've been vegan now for 2 years. Ooh, ooh. Isn't it the absolute best? I love it so much. I've gotten so much better at cooking. I think that's the most fun part because you learn so much about seasoning and sauces and texture and all of that. It's just so fun. Like thinking back on before I was vegan, my meals were so boring and unhealthy. You just ate like so much meat. You didn't even realize how much meat you're eating. Crazy. Chris the Mormon says, you're the reason I went vegan. Oh, that's so sweet. I'm so happy to be part of your journey. There were a lot of YouTubers who inspired me with veganism, so I'm glad to pay it forward and to help other people. It's like, besides Catholicism, the most important thing in my life. So a lot of people say you shouldn't identify with veganism that much, but I feel like you eat all throughout the day. So it's like a big part of my life, you know, like I think about it every day, throughout every day whenever I'm cooking food, and then I follow all my vegan accounts to keep being educated and stuff. So yeah, and then because of veganism, you care more about the environment. So that's why you get more into environmentalism stuff too. So Vince, thank you for the donation. Lizzie, I consider you a blessing in my life. That's so sweet. I'm so happy you're here. Okay. Sorry, I'm behind on comments. Daniel says, if you ever come to Mexico, you should tell me. I'll be very excited. Definitely, I will vlog. Actually, I don't know if you're allowed to vlog going into Guadalupe. Some churches, so most churches I've been to, everyone is like taking pictures and stuff. Okay, great. No. Bigger churches. So for example, like when I went to St. Patrick's in New York City the first time I went there were like a ton of people like doing photo shoots with the church art and stuff. And like when I visit churches, I go around and take like tons of pictures of everything. But like typically I'm alone in the church when I do that. So I don't know what it's like in other countries if they're like fine with you filming inside churches. So, because I love doing that. I love being able to look through my phone at beautiful church art and keep all the memories. Okay. Julie says, oh, you're engaged? Congrats. Is he the same guy you were with in your old Bipolar videos? Old Bipolar videos. I don't know. I don't think so. I don't know who you're talking about. I didn't date anyone when I was... Yeah, I don't know. Okay. Lex says, I would love to go vegan, but I don't love vegetables. That's fine. There's so many different things to eat as a vegan. Like, you could get a lot of your nutrients from other food. So, like, I'll list the things I eat as a vegan. So, like, the main part of my diet is whole grains. So, I eat brown rice, 100% whole wheat noodles, a lot of times brown rice noodles, bread, tortillas, chips. I mean, like, tortilla chips, healthy chips, and beans, quinoa, lentils, chia seeds, flax seeds. I eat a ton of fruit. So if you're into fruit, that could be where you get a lot of minerals and vitamins and nutrients and everything from. A lot of vegans make like smoothie bowls, smoothies, acai bowls, oatmeal, stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, I love vegetables. Like, I eat the same vegetables all the time. I just change my meals. So I love mushrooms, bell pepper, tomatoes, zucchini, broccoli, avocado. So I actually learned recently, though, that a lot of vegetables are fruits. So, like, tomatoes are fruit, bell peppers are fruit, avocados are fruit. And I was like, why do we call them vegetables then? If like technically they're not. But I think the way we define it is like fruit is sweet, vegetable isn't. So anyways, there's a lot of different places to get nutrients. Also take a multivitamin and that will make sure you're getting enough stuff. So yeah, I don't think that'll be a problem if you don't like vegetables, just because there's so many options of what to eat. But also there's like a ton of different types of vegetables. So I wouldn't like give up on all vegetables just because there's like so many ways to prepare them. So you might just not like the way you've been eating vegetables, but yeah, there's so many ways to cook them. Like one of my favorite things to cook is broccoli in the oven. So I'll cook on 425 for like 20 minutes, like broccoli and carrots, and they get like super crispy and so good. Sorry, there's a bug. So that's really good. So yeah. Don't give up on vegetables. There's so many types of vegetables. Okay. Let's see. Daniel says, yes, they can let you film. We're talking about in Mexico, filming inside churches and doing pictures and stuff. My mom takes many pictures in the basilica. Okay, cool. And I feel like churches where there's like a ton of tourists are more chill with it, but you know, it totally depends on the country. I should definitely look into that the next time I'm traveling, like Google and make sure I'm not being like super rude. So I was talking about that in, I think it was like my last video. I was talking about how when I travel to different countries, I'm like super aware that I don't want to be like an annoying American tourist because people think we're like super loud. I think that's like the main thing, because a lot of countries on like public transportation and airports and stuff, it's like really quiet, whereas Americans are like, da, 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 da. You know what I mean? We're so loud. Okay. Mimi says, how do you feel about... I've never heard of her. I haven't watched her. Weird. Let's see. I can watch it. I really like, actually, I don't want to share the vegan YouTubers I like because all of them are like very controversial and not people I would like want to associate with me 100%, if that makes sense, because I feel like I watch a lot of content that I like disagree with some parts in it, you know, like obviously with Catholic content, it's like a lot of it is like basic theology that of course I agree with, but other YouTubers, a lot of things I don't agree with them 100%, but I still want to hear their perspectives on things. So I wouldn't want to share YouTubers and then have someone go there and be like, Lizzie believes this, because I totally don't. Okay. Elizabeth says the same thing. Do you like this YouTube channel? I don't want to say the name because I don't know. Okay. I'll look into it though, but I'm not gonna talk about it in the live stream out loud. Jasmine Ledesma says, Lizzie, have you ever experienced psychosis during episodes? I have bipolar 1 and haven't found many who struggle with it. Yeah, so a lot of people have psychosis in depression episodes. So that's when I've had psychosis, but I've never had psychosis in manic episodes. I don't know how normal it is, but one of the big bipolar YouTubers, she experienced a lot of psychosis. Her name is Sammy. So she's talked about it a lot. Yeah, I have no idea how common it is, like, statistically, and I feel like a lot of the bipolar people I meet, I don't, like, start the conversation, like, have you experienced psychosis? Like, I think that's such a personal thing, just like how I wouldn't ask, like, have you ever committed suicide? You know what I mean? Like, I would never want to ask someone that, so I feel like I might know a lot of people who've had it, but I never talked about it to them, so... Patrick says, I discovered some saints' biographies written by their priests who are also saints. Yeah, that's how it is. Dominic Sevilla was a student of St. John Bosco. Catherine of Siena's confessor and biographer was Raymond of Campbell. Yeah. It's so cool. Oh, this vegan YouTuber, I'm glad I didn't say the name because it seems like she's really problematic. See, I know. So many YouTubers, vegan YouTubers, I don't know what it is, but some of them are like have really weird viewpoints. So I think it's because the type of people who get popular on YouTube, at least for veganism, are like kind of extremists and have some weird views. And like all of social media, like the vegan people are just really extreme, whereas like most vegan people in real life are like super chill. So Chaya, what is that supposed to mean? Okay. Jasmine says, I was under the impression, yeah, you're correct, that it's more common in mania than depression just because your brain is going so fast. Sorry if that was intrusive. Oh, no. I talked about like everything on my YouTube channel. But that was my understanding that psychosis is just a more extreme version of mania. So I experienced psychosis and depression and I was like, oh, this is so weird. And then I researched it and it's actually very common to experience psychosis and depression. So... and that's a big sign you have bipolar. I was talking before about how depression and unipolar depression with major depressive disorder versus bipolar. So I don't know how common it is if you have unipolar depression. I've never met anyone who had psychosis with unipolar. But yeah. Chris says, I have bipolar 1 without psychosis. Yeah. That's why I've actually questioned my diagnosis of bipolar 1 because I didn't have psychosis. I was like, is this bipolar 1? But the psychiatrist was very certain about it. This one psychiatrist I had, she was just like very intense. And apparently I was like really manic when I went to her. And I didn't know, but looking back, I'm like, oh, I was. So it's like she knew I was in a manic episode when I saw her. And I was like, how do you know? Can you give me evidence of this? And she just like felt it, which I totally get. Like I can get people's, like when you meet someone, you can like get a feel, and if they're in an episode, especially a manic episode, like you can feel it. Also depression. I feel like you can also tell if someone's in a depression episode, but like they could also have MDD. You don't know if they're bipolar. But yeah, it's so interesting like what I realize now in people, because I never would have known people had depression. But now that I've gone through it, you can like see subtle things in how people are. But people who've never had it won't notice because it's so subtle. Daniel Payne says, what is unipolar? So it's just the prefix. So una meaning one, bi meaning two. And so bipolar, you have depression and mania. Unipolar, just depression. So major depressive disorder, MDD, is what I say a lot because I feel like you're saying the diagnosis, but unipolar depression is like when you just have depression. So I think you could use the phrase unipolar depression talking about someone with situational depression versus MDD is just like major depressive disorder. So Luana, love from Brazil. I love Brazil. So many of you are from there. Amy says, my doctor just put me on Depakote. One psychiatrist tried to put me on Depakote and I was like, no, I refuse. I've just read that it's like very, very intense, but I should read about it again. It probably was just some people had too high of a dosage, I think is what happened. Google account, do you like Archbishop Fulton Sheen? I've only read one book by him and it was so good. Someone mailed it to me and I like don't know who did because they didn't like write a note with it or anything. And a lot of like companies and just so many people are sending me things in the mail and I was like, who is this person who sent it? But it was like such an amazing book. It was a compilation of a lot of his writings talking about the crucifixion, and I think about it like all the time. My favorite thing in the book is he talked about how when Jesus says I thirst, it wasn't just talking about physically needing hydration, but how he thirsts for the love of everyone in the world. Like he wants so bad for everyone to know his love and have a relationship with him and to be part of the church. And so when he says I thirst, he's thirsting for all the lost souls and the people who don't know him. So that was amazing. I always think about that when I think about it. And okay, the sorrowful mysteries are so much more meaningful now after reading that book, which I think is in my Amazon shop. Let's see. Yeah, it's the third book. It's called The Cries of Jesus from the Cross, an anthology by Archbishop Fulton Sheen. Okay, cool. Let's look at more comments. Lady Ravenfell says, I'm not Catholic either, but we'll leave the convo here to put proper topics back on track. We're here to learn and support. Vince Four Legend says, Lizzie, if I become famous Twitch streamer, I definitely will give you a shout out. You've been doing that a lot. I actually know like nothing about Twitch, so. Mark Mosley says, I have had about 20 psychotic episodes. I went off risperidone several times and kept having psychotic episodes. I was so deep into the collective unconscious that I saw some of the archetypes. Wow. How do psychotic episodes work? Because I know, like, if I'm calling something a manic episode, it would be like several months. Same with depression. So when you have psychosis, is it like I had psychosis this day? Or is it like you have it for a long time? I don't understand that part of it. Because that sounds like a lot. Like when I count my episodes, it's probably like 5 or 6 total. And a lot of it is mixed. So I don't really know how to... Like if I had to count how many episodes I've had, I wouldn't know how to answer that question. So the fact that you know, it must be like very, very decipherable. Daniel Payne says, can someone who's not in the church become a saint? So when we call someone a saint, it's like the church officially saying it. So someone wouldn't be officially called a saint who wasn't Catholic on earth. Does that make sense? Like we're not saying that no one else can be in heaven. Like the church has not said like no one is in heaven besides people who are canonized saints, you know what I mean? Like, there might be people in heaven who aren't Catholic and who are of another religion, but they wouldn't be called a saint by the church, if that makes sense. Like, the church is very agnostic about who's in heaven, which I really like, because it's like, who are we to know God's judgment of each person? So yeah, my guess is there's probably non-Catholics in heaven for sure, but I don't know. We don't know. Jacob says it wouldn't make much sense for a non-Catholic to be declared a saint. Interesting question to contemplate, though. Well, what is very interesting is that when someone's declared a saint, it's not only like, oh, they can pray for us, they're in heaven, but it's also like they had an exemplary life and we should learn about their life and live out the faith like how they did, like they're an inspiring figure. So it would be interesting if the church saw a non-Catholic who had this like exemplary moral life, but yeah, wouldn't happen. Okay, Elizabeth Cross, have you ever been on Zoloft? No, but so many people ask me that question, so it must be very popular among psychiatrists right now. I was on it for a little while due to severe depression. I'm off of it now and doing okay, but my insurance stopped covering it. That's so annoying. I had to go off Vraylar because I changed health insurance. But yeah, that's horrible if they just like suddenly decide they're not going to pay for like a life-saving medication someone's on. Crazy. But I mean, the good thing is that there's so many different medications for mental illness. So because you can be on like different dosages and put multiple together, it's not like the end of the world. Like, it's so annoying because it could take like months, like up to a year to get on like the perfect medication balance, just because you have to like gradually go on each of them. So it's so annoying to have to go off because it's like, okay, the next 3 months I'm not going to be balanced, but like long term, like you will be okay. It's just super annoying for like a year, so, or a few months. I don't think it would take a year for everyone. You're probably on some other ones as well, so you have that as backup. Jose, hi Lizzie, did you attend the traditional Latin Mass? And if you do, what did you think about it? Yes, I made a video that had a ton of views in like 2017 talking about Latin Mass because I did go to it for several months. I removed the video just because I said something in the video about receiving the Eucharist, about how like they don't know if you receive the Eucharist, so you can like go up and receive the Eucharist. And I was like, no. Videos taken down. Although I could just go edit that out. Huh. I never thought. Okay, I'm gonna write that down. The video might go back up, so you might be able to see it. TLM video edit out Eucharist. I've actually deleted a lot of the videos. Well, I put them on private. I haven't like deleted them just because like obviously people who have followed my channel for a while will know like Lizzie was Protestant for the first 8 years of her YouTube channel. Then she became Catholic in 2018. So like most people would be like, okay, this video is like 2016. Like she probably doesn't espouse those beliefs anymore. But some of it is like, it could still be scandalizing. So one of the priests I talked to, he just like told me which videos to remove. It wasn't like an ultimatum, but I was like asking for advice and he was like, okay, like, I was describing some of them. He was like, yeah, remove that from YouTube. So, yeah. KY4T Jew Todd says, I appreciate your channel. Thanks for sharing all you do about dealing with bipolar issues. I'm struggling a lot lately. Dealing with it the best that I can. That's how we all can do. Doing the best we can with every day and every moment. I think that working out every day is like the most amazing thing for me and my brain, and that's helped so much through the years. So that's really helpful. And then consistent sleep schedule and Elevate app, which I was talking about earlier, really helps with neurogenesis and helping your brain. So Carrie says, I experienced psychosis during a depression where if it was dark and I was alone, I thought any noise I heard was rapists trying to get into my house. that lasted over a period of a couple months. That's horrible. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. That's terrifying. 2 months? Wow. Yeah, I didn't know it lasted that long. I thought it like was a few hours and then it was done. Just some stories I've heard from people, it was like short, but wow, that's so long. Elizabeth Cross says, I've got to go run now, but thank you, Liz. I'm grateful to find someone like you on YouTube. Aw, have a good night. Thanks for hanging out with me. Joshua J just arrived. What up, y'all? Hi. How's your day going so far? Lex says, do you have any advice with staying consistent with God while having depression and anxiety? It gets hard trying to talk or even read. Interesting. So I've never experienced anxiety before, and it's actually a clue that I was bipolar, because I remember my therapist back when I was diagnosed with depression before bipolar, they were like, do you have anxiety? Do you have anxiety? Why don't you have anxiety? Like, they thought it was weird I didn't also experience anxiety with depression. So I think that's a bipolar thing. So one of my best friends has generalized anxiety disorder, and she takes medication for it. And she's explained it to me, but she's never explained that it's hard trying to talk or read. But she's on medication. So, like, most of the time I've known her, she's been on medication. And then, like, basically the whole time I've known her. But she's just gotten, like, really great medication the past couple of years. So she doesn't really experience symptoms. But if it's difficult to read, you can listen to the Bible. I made a video, I'll link it here, talking about different Catholic apps that I use, and a lot of it, like, you can listen to the Bible, you can listen to a prayer app, there are lots of different options. So here, I think there were like 7 or 8 different ones, so I would look in the apps and do some of them, because I think if you can't, like, sit down and, like, read the Bible, you could read someone read it, or, like, the Father Mike Schmidt's podcast. So here, my video about Catholic apps. And audiobooks are also really cool. And honestly, I recommend, like, the podcast, audiobooks, listening to the Bible, like, to everyone. Because I think a lot of us, like, if we're cooking, if we're commuting to work, if we're taking a walk, like, we have more free time to listen than to, like, sit down and read a book. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I'm sorry. I really don't have advice on anxiety because I've never experienced it. And I don't understand it. Like, I've tried, and I don't know, I feel like if you can't experience it through your life, like, you can read about it, but you'll never really know the lived experience of it. But I'm sure therapists have a lot of techniques on it, and if you find a Christian therapist, they'll probably be able to help you. But I don't know. Maru S says, do you ever get really angry when you are manic? Like, anything or everyone just is, like, super annoying? No, I don't experience anger. I'm just really happy when I'm in mania. Top of the world. Everything's perfect. Everyone's beautiful. So yeah, I really love how I am when I'm manic. And if it didn't cause brain damage, I probably would want to be manic a lot. But my fiance hates when I'm manic because he just thinks I'm such a different person. And I think when you're, like, inside your own head, you, like, don't truly know how you're coming across. So I don't know, maybe if I saw a video of myself when I'm manic, I, like, wouldn't like myself or something. But internally, it feels great. So Lady says, I have depression and anxiety too. I'm on Lexapro and I've had trouble reading for a while. I do mostly audiobooks now. Interesting. I'm gonna ask my friend about this. Huh. James Burla says, Lizzie has a video called 13 Signs a Guy Likes You. Oh my goodness. I met this girl the other day. She came up to me and she said that's, like, what she used to watch on my channel. I was like, oh my goodness, that's so funny. Vince says, Lizzie doesn't have an angry bone in her body. Yeah, I don't get angry. I get annoyed sometimes, but I'm not, like, angry. I don't ever feel that. Patrick says, Lizzie was actually a relationship tip YouTuber, am I right? Well, I made so many different types of videos, and I did make a lot of relationship advice videos like in high school, and honestly, it was because I was getting so many questions about that, and my viewers at the time who were in middle school and high school, that was like what they're so interested in. But I also made a lot of videos about God and studying. I did like a couple fashion. I really love doing like cleaning videos and room tours and stuff. Those were really trendy on YouTube at the time. So I did talk about that a lot, but it was always kind of like a mix of topics. So I've changed my YouTube a lot during the years as I've grown up. I feel like if it was on one topic, I wouldn't be able to keep doing it because I'd get really bored. Anything and everything says, when I'm depressed, I withdraw from God. How do you think I should overcome this? So I've talked about this a lot, that our relationship with God is about actions. And so it shouldn't matter how you feel about God. And I think the Catholic view of how to love God and be Christian is very liberating because it's about actions, living it out. So for example, when I was Protestant, if I didn't feel God's presence, I was like, I feel completely abandoned. I don't want to pray right now. I don't want to read the Bible. I feel like he's not there at all. In Catholicism, I go to daily mass, go to my group Bible study. You know what I mean? Like, it's events with other people that's collective. And I think that when you're in depression, you can't feel love from God, but you can feel God's love through other people in a tangible way. But also, Mass is really cool because it's like you don't have to feel anything to be there. You just participate in it. And I love looking at crucifixes when I'm in depression because I know in that moment that Jesus felt exactly what I'm feeling. And when he said, my God, why have you forsaken me? When he's quoting the Psalm, he feels abandoned by God in that moment because of his pain and suffering. And so I experience the same thing in depression when I feel that I don't feel God's presence at all. And he's like, why would he let me suffer like this? When I look up at a crucifix, it's extremely comforting. And so I love walking into a Catholic church when I'm in depression and getting to Mass early and kneeling down on my kneeler and looking up at the giant crucifix. Extremely comforting. It brings me so much peace. So I absolutely love going to Mass and being with other people. So, and Christianity was meant to be collective. And so I think if you're on your own, of course, you're not going to feel motivated in depression, but it's really important to keep going to group activities. I don't know if everyone's like this, but when I was in depression, I like never wanted to be alone because other people were happy and had energy and were passionate about things. And like, I didn't feel any of those. And it was very cathartic seeing my friends laugh and talk to each other and get excited about what they're reading. Just like hearing their conversations. And a lot of times I couldn't keep up mentally with understanding it. But just seeing them interact as people was amazing. And so I think if you have a physical Bible study to go to, that's amazing. And don't worry about doing individual devotion if you literally can't do it. But yeah, go to things in person. Really helpful. You should make a 13 signs a Catholic girl likes you. I don't think it's that different. And everyone, yeah, like the things I shared in those like signs whoever likes you videos are just like objective body language indicators. And so it wouldn't change depending on religion. Mario says, do you know both kinds of being manic? I do. I know the feeling of loving everybody and being super empathetic, and I know the dark side of being manic, and sometimes it overlaps. So maybe I'll experience it one day. Hopefully not, because I'll be on meds. Joshua Neese says, I am mostly a faithful Catholic except in mania or depression. In mania, I want to join 10 to 15 different religions. And in depression, I don't have the energy to get out of bed usually. Yeah, I've never been that manic with wanting to join 10 to 15 different religions. I just get really, really more intense about God in Catholicism and wanting to pray all the time and read my Bible a ton and annotate theology books obsessively. So, but I mean, I did kind of become Catholic in a manic episode, but yeah, not that many religions. No one says you'd think it would be remorse. Looking up at a crucifix and being comforted. In my mind, I think of the suffering he did before getting there. Then others. Yeah. So I don't know if I think you're not Catholic if you're saying this, but it took me a while to understand the beauty and the deeper meaning in a crucifix. Because yes, it's to remind us of Jesus' death and sacrifice for us, but it's supposed to make us feel loved. Because Jesus would have gone through that for any individual person. If they were the only person in the world, he would have died in that way for us. And so it's something where, yes, it's gruesome and it's horrifying. And it should induce empathy. But you get used to it. Like, when I was not Catholic yet and I saw a crucifix, I was like shocked and terrified. And I was looking around and I was like, why is no one else freaking out and sobbing? Like, that was my reaction because I never grew up with crucifixes. And so I've gotten used to it over time where it's not this like horrifying, offensive thing. And I see the deeper meaning in it. So you see Jesus' love for us by sacrificing ourselves. You see the motivation and empowerment where Jesus says, take up your cross and follow me. So you see Jesus sacrificed in this physical way. What are ways that we can live out the faith and make sacrifices in our lives to fully live out God's love through Catholic ethics? So there's that part. Love, empowerment, and then the peace comes from Jesus understanding our sufferings and being a human and going through the struggles of being human. And it's just like the most amazing thing that like God could come to earth and experience being like us. And so the fact that he did have that moment on the cross, moments when he didn't feel God's presence in the way that you would if life was going okay, the fact that he's experienced that is extremely comforting. And it's not just the crucifixion. So many parts of Jesus' life are extremely comforting that he went through that and lived through it and experienced it. It's like the most amazing thing ever that God would come to earth. And so, yes, initially I was horrified and crying. Anytime I saw a crucifix, I like couldn't even look up at it. But it's like now I see deeper meanings in it. But also I'm very empathetic. So that's why it was so hard. Other people were like, why? Why are you so intense about that? But, okay. Maru, thanks for answering. I gotta go to bed now. We have votes tomorrow and I'm kind of excited. Thanks for your videos and your work on YouTube. You helped me a lot. Greetings from Germany. I hope you have a beautiful election. I hope the people you elect care about ethics and peace and live out love to help everyone. Andrew says, my favorite Catholic movie is Fatima, the old movie. It is very beautiful and a very sensitive movie. Blood Covenant says, Jesus didn't choose the scholars of his day. They had too much pride. The same is true today. Anything and everything. Lizzie, my religious parents prohibit me from taking medications for my bipolar 2. They thought I'll be healed from Jesus alone. What do you think of this? Well, you have to go behind their back and go on medication and lie to them if you need to, because that's so ridiculous. Like, you're not going to take life-saving medication because your parents are against it. You know what I mean? So just like find a way to get around it. Move out of the house too. I mean, you might be too young, but you know, like work on going to college far away and stuff because you need to prioritize your life. And honestly, like, I don't know how to deal with people like that because there were definitely people in my life who were kind of like against me being medicated, but it wasn't for a religious reason. It was not like, oh, God will heal you. Like, I never ever had to encounter that. So I've never had to think, like, how would I convince someone in that situation to not be irrational? So maybe send them articles. That's what I would start with doing. And I don't know what your parents are like, but I feel like mine would have responded really well to research. And so you could send them articles talking about like the genetic basis for bipolar. Email me, LizziesAnswers@gmail.com, and I will send you articles. You can, of course, find out on your own, but if you need help, I can send you some things. Just because if you can prove that it's biological, then it's very difficult to argue with that. Because then you'd say you want God to change your genes, which is impossible. Like, if God went back in time and changed your genes, it would change your entire life. Like, everything would be different. And yeah, that's not how prayer works. So, and you know, some people do go in remission, which is like another article that I'll send. Here, I'm gonna write this down. Okay, so number 1, genetic basis for bipolar. Yeah, so that's something else, and this is like a huge problem people do, is they're not currently in an episode, so they're like, oh, I don't need meds, but like an episode could come back any moment, and so even if you're in remission, you still need to be on your meds to prevent an episode. And so there's a lot of people who are like, oh, I haven't had an episode in 2 years, I don't need to be medicated, and it's like, you could go manic in an instant, and you could spend $10,000, quit your job, sell all your possessions, cut out your friends, commit adultery against your spouse. You know what I mean? Like, in a day, you could ruin your life. And so it's just not worth it. And when there's the 1 in 2 suicide attempt rate, 1 in 4 suicide rate, like, why are you gonna risk that? You know, it's like literally your life. You can't play around and not care about your life. I personally, unless it's like difficult, like impossible to get health insurance and pay for medication, I personally think everyone else in a depression episode, if it's like a severe depression episode, refusing to get medicated, I think is the most selfish thing you can do, because you're chill with you dying and traumatizing everyone in your life. Like, I seriously think it's the most selfish thing, refusing medication. Like, imagine any other illness that has a 1 in 4 death rate. Oh, I'm not gonna do treatment for my cancer. I was diagnosed with diabetes, I'm not gonna take medication. Like, oh, it's just a 1 in 4 death rate. I'll be fine. I'll just start working out and eating. You know what I mean? Like, any other illness, if people talked how people do with depression who refuse to be medicated, no one would do that. You know, people would be like, how are you thinking that? But with depression, somehow people, it's like fine to refuse medication when you have a 1 in 4. Oh, I'm talking about bipolar disorder has a 1 in 4 suicide rate. Other types of depression. Let's see what major depression suicide rate is. (2 to 15%, whereas bipolar is 25. Okay. So 15%. Well, I guess that doesn't make my argument as strong, but if you still have 15% is still pretty high. I mean, if you think of like any illness ever, if there's a chance of death, you do treatment, right? Like if something is going to kill you. So crazy. I can't imagine people are like that. Okay. Anything and everything. Right now, I'm in remission, exactly what I was saying. After a severe mixed episode, I'm scared I'll go into another episode. Yeah, you are so amazing for being self-aware about that, because so many people who are in their, 30s, 40s, 50s, like they've had bipolar for so long and they're like, oh, I'm in remission, like it's gone. So it's really cool that you're self-aware about it and like want to prevent it. Because so many people like are addicted to the mania and they just like don't want to be on meds. So it's so incredible that you like have got it figured out and you're in like an amazing, healthy mindset to have a beautiful, productive, influential life on the world, because you're taking this so seriously. So I'm very proud of you. I get so many messages of people who are dating or married to a bipolar person and the bipolar person refuses to get medicated. So it's like every single day I read messages like that. So it's like so heartwarming and so encouraging. to see someone who's taking it seriously. Because I feel like it's just really sad, the types of messages that I read from people. So there are people out there who love themselves and are super educated and knowledgeable on it. So you're amazing. Okay, I've been on here for 100 minutes, 104 minutes, which means we have 15 minutes remaining. We do 120 minutes, which is 2 hours. Patrick Nugraha says, Jesus prayed that we all could be one. John 17. I was just talking about this with someone today. The only thing that I can see, the obvious one, is in Catholicism. You can join Eastern Catholicism. They're basically the Eastern Church with Rome. Yeah. So I was talking about this with someone today, and we were talking about how Protestantism seems to like go against the John 17 prayer where Jesus says, I pray for us to be one. And my thing is like the Catholic Church hasn't changed. And like our entire basis of running our church government is stay united with Rome. If you're united with Rome, you're good. And so that whole basis just like sets up unity automatically because we have the church magisterium, which is like living out and preserving and teaching the Bible and the interpretations of the Bible through the church tradition. No one is talking about combat veterans and PTSD. Yes, absolutely. They need so much more care. And they're doing a bill in Congress right now trying to get medical marijuana to be legalized because that has been so amazing in treating PTSD. And specifically, the bill is about veterans. Let's see. I haven't checked up on this bill in a while. Marijuana, veterans. Let's see. Okay, 2021 to 2022. Latest action, 4/15/2021. Read twice and referred to the Committee on Judiciary. Anyways, it's going to take forever to go through things, so hopefully by next year it will pass and really, really help veterans with PTSD. Because in high school, I read like a really intense article in The Atlantic talking about how like this whole unit, like so many of them had died by suicide. And it was talking about like how horrific PTSD is. And yeah, I have no clue what it's like to experience. I read about the symptoms, but like I was saying with anxiety, if you don't have the lived experience, like you truly like cannot conceptualize how bad it is. Have you read The Divine Comedy by Dante? No, I have not. I've learned about it a lot, but I have not read it. I was very negative about it before I became Catholic, which I think is like a ton of millennials are. They're like, I hate Dante. He ruined Augustine. You know what I mean? People are like that about Dante. And like, I think a lot of people are like that. And then once they've been Catholic for a while, they're like, oh, Dante's pretty cool. Okay. Lisa says, I agree with you when talking about medication. Take the medicine and do all the therapy. Your life and your loved ones is worth it. That's a really good way to say it. You're worth it. I don't know how to say things in like positive emotional ways. I say it in like, these are the horrible side effects. Get your life together. But that's a really good way to say it. You're worth it. I feel like that communicates well with a lot of people. Joshua says, my dad and sister both have PTSD. My aunt, my dad's sister, has generalized anxiety disorder. I have bipolar disorder. Wow, that is so many. Patrick, practically, if you want to have one big Chrysostom again, it is most likely in its biggest branch, just because Catholics have experience in receiving Protestants, e.g. Anglican priests and Eastern churches. Okay, what are your thoughts on having children while we have bipolar and we have a big chance on giving it to our child? This is a really, really good question. It's going to be a future video, especially when I'm married and thinking about having children. I'll be pondering the question so much more. But when I was diagnosed, for like a year, I said I'm never having children because of how traumatic it was. And I think the further I got away from my depression episode, I was able to think of it more logically. Because right when I was out of it, I was just like, this is the worst thing I will ever experience in my life. So traumatic, so much brain damage. Just anytime I thought of that time, I would like start sobbing. And so when I thought of the big picture, I realized that if my child has bipolar disorder, I will recognize it immediately when it starts coming out. I will get them to a psychiatrist, they will get medicated, and I will be the best parent in the world to a kid with bipolar because I know exactly every emotion they're going through because I've experienced it. And so they're gonna have an amazing mom who's like a therapist who will help them through every single horrible part of it, and it won't get bad. The reason that my bipolar was so traumatic is because I didn't know I was bipolar. I was having all of these episodes. I wasn't being properly medicated because I wasn't diagnosed. If I'd known I was bipolar when I was like 17, I could have immediately gone on medication when my first hypomanic episode happened in college, my freshman year of college. I could have gone on medication. And if my child has it, like, I'll immediately see it. And even when your child is a baby, like bipolar babies cry more, like they're more colicky. And so it's like through the years, I'll notice like little symptoms in childhood, like, oh, they might be bipolar. And I'll immediately take them to get to a psychiatrist and therapist and to sort through everything. So yeah, obviously I could be wrong on that, but I feel like I'm like 99% correct that like their experience will be way less traumatic because they'll know early on. And something else is a lot of people go off meds because they don't understand why they have to be on meds and they like the feeling of mania. And so I'll be able to sit down with my child and be like, okay, this is the amount of brain damage that happens when you're in each manic episode. Long term, this increases your risk of dementia, Alzheimer's, cardiovascular disease, like I'll explain to them all the facts of what will happen. And I think I didn't know any information, like no one told me any information about it. I had to do so much of my own research and I was experiencing it as I was researching it. And so if my child has it, I'll immediately give them so much research and we'll talk about it together. So yeah, I don't think bipolar is as bad if you're diagnosed because you can just go on medicine like with any other medical issue. So yeah, and obviously I will pray for my kids to not be bipolar, but if they are, my thing is I think it's definitely gonna be passed down in my family, but in my family it skipped a generation, so it might be my grandchildren, it might be my sister's children, so I think someone in the family will definitely have it, and I think I'm not gonna say it. I don't think it would be interpreted the way I want it to be. So yeah, so I'm not worried about passing it on. I think it's very toxic how like throughout US history, people have sterilized people with mental illness and they're like, you're not allowed to have children. A recent example is Britney Spears. She, through her conservatorship, isn't allowed to have children. She has bipolar disorder. Well, we don't know 100%. She hasn't like said it, but all the symptoms are there. Like, there's no other explanation. So she's not allowed to have children because she's bipolar through her conservatorship. That is such an evil view that because you have a mental illness, you can't have children. And yeah, I think it's horrible. And I think everyone should be able to make that decision on their own And all these things are treatable. And I think if I ask my parents, do you regret having me because I've suffered so much? They would be like, what? How could we ever think that? That's a horrible thought. Like, of course not. And I think our country especially is very like anti-suffering. And so we care so much about having positive emotions. But my experience being Catholic is that beautiful things can come out of suffering. Jesus literally took someone being crucified and resurrected and created this beautiful religion out of it. And so if God can redeem crucifixion, he can redeem anything. And so suffering makes people more empathetic. And of course, I wouldn't wish it on anyone, but I don't think it's this horrible life. I mean, it is life altering, but if you're diagnosed and on medication, it's not like you're suffering every day your entire life. Like, you're not going to suffer that much if you're medicated. So those are my thoughts. I'll probably make a whole video about it when I'm married and thinking about having children more, but I definitely want to have biological children. We talked like an hour ago in the live stream about how if I'm infertile, I don't care. We do want to adopt children, so we'll definitely have children. But yeah, if they have bipolar, I'll be an amazing mom. And we'll understand each other in a really special way. What? Jordan Minkoff Geraldo? Hi, Liz from CFBC. Huh. This is a Bible camp I used to go to like 10 years ago. So yeah, I don't know who you are. I'm horrible at names, but I'm sure we were friends at some point and had some good memories together. Lex, I'm skeptical on going on meds because it's not natural, and my parents made me go on psych meds and it made me worse. Okay, so the natural argument is a logical fallacy. There's a lot of things we do in life that are not natural. So here's some examples. Acrylic nails, electricity, using plumage. You know, like a lot of things aren't naturally in the environment, and we create things to live a better life. And just the whole natural argument is like so stupid. It's literally a logical fallacy in the type of philosophy I was a part of. And so the whole natural argument is just like totally ridiculous. It's wrong. It's fallacious. And so, you know, you can point to so many things in society that are amazing. Like cars are not natural. Planes are not natural. Dogs are not natural because obviously there are like dogs that go back to the ancient world, but the current way that we're breeding dogs to be a certain way, not natural. So are you against dogs? You know what I mean? Like even cats being inside, that's not natural, how we've tamed them and like our relationship with them. So, and also the way we grow food with pesticides, which I'm actually against, but that's just like a normal thing that's gone on. And like, is eating vegetables with pesticides like horrible? You never do it. Like, yeah, deodorant isn't natural, perfume isn't natural. Yeah, my hair, you can barely see my blonde hair in this hairstyle. Yeah, my hair isn't natural, makeup's not natural, paint isn't natural, we created that as humans. Anesthesia isn't natural. Yeah, so there's a lot of things. Surgery isn't natural. So many things that we've developed as a human species that are amazing. And that's how we've been able to survive and create such an amazing race and have so many new inventions and just like live better lives is through unnatural things. So you could literally apply that to literally like every medication is not natural. I mean, with some exceptions, but most like supplements, like multivitamins, not natural. So yeah, everything's not natural. It's fine. What I love when talking about bipolar meds is like applying it to any other illness. Like when you tell someone with diabetes, that's not natural. Would you tell someone going through cancer treatment, chemo isn't natural? No, you tell them be on your life-saving medication. And also, there are dozens of different bipolar medications, and you can put them in different combinations. And so there's hundreds of different options of medication, dosages, combinations, etc. And so if you don't like how one medication affects you, find a different medication or go to a lower dosage. So I don't know why this is such a popular, like I literally see messages like this all the time. People who are like, I didn't like this one medication dosage I was on. I'll never be on medication again. I don't understand that, because there's dozens of different options and then you put them together. So like for most of my bipolar, I've been on 3 medicines at a time. And so I've also been on dosages that I haven't liked. So I've been like, can we reduce this dosage? And sometimes I'm like, can we increase this dosage? And sometimes I'm like, I don't like these side effects anymore. I want a different mood stabilizer. So yeah, it's normal to change medicines throughout your life. And with bipolar, as I'm sure with other mental illnesses, it constantly is changing how it's manifesting. And so you'll have to change medications throughout your life just because the bipolar changes with how it's affecting you. So yeah, you're going to be on a lot of different medications throughout your life. It can be really annoying and you'll get impatient because it takes a lot of time to get on and off. Like one of the ones I'm on, Lamictal, it takes 2 months to get to the working dosage. So you have to be really, really patient with it, but it's extremely rewarding. Once you're on the right medicines, you can be on them for like several years. And a lot of times I forget I'm bipolar until I take my medications at night because they're working so well. Lex says, I just smoke weed because it's more natural. But now I feel like I don't have control over my emotions by being high every day. What's your take on it? So my take on it is that it's way safer to be given a specific dosage of medication. So here's the thing. If marijuana is legal in the whole country, like through the federal government, and so doctors, like medical doctors, are able to give out marijuana as medication, that's fine because you're working with a doctor, they're giving you a specific dosage, and they're consistently monitoring your symptoms. Self-medicating is horrible. You don't know what the dosage is supposed to be. You don't know how it's going to affect you. You don't know how you should change the dosage throughout your life. You know what I mean? And bipolar is so dangerous. I've said this throughout the live stream. One manic episode, one day of mania can ruin your entire life. You can go tens of thousands of dollars in debt. You can sell all of your possessions. You can quit your job. You can lose friends. It's horrible. One day of mania can ruin your life. And so it's not worth it. Like, I get it. Medicating with marijuana might alleviate some of the symptoms, but like with any other illness, you should just be on a regimen, specific dosages with a doctor. And it's unfortunate that marijuana is not legalized in the whole country because it should be, and medical doctors should be allowed legally to prescribe it. Right now, they're not. So there's a bill in Congress right now that's trying to make it legal federally, and one of their main aims with that is helping veterans with PTSD. So that will probably happen in 2022. I assume it's going to go through because a Republican is leading the charge. Democrats tend to already be pro-legalization, so I think everyone's going to come together in 2022. So it'll take a lot of time for them to talk about it in med school and to be able to practice and everything. So maybe in like 5 years we'll be able to do that. But in the meantime, it's really important to have a specific regimen, a specific amount of dosages. And yeah, I mean, marijuana has, I don't know how old you are, but if you're like under 25, marijuana causes permanent brain damage. Permanent brain damage. So not okay. Like, it would be way better for you to be doing like other hard drugs because it doesn't give you permanent brain damage. Like, seriously, marijuana is so dangerous if you're young. And so obviously don't do hard drugs either. I'm just saying, like, long term, obviously you could get addicted to a hard drug, but yeah, like, people don't realize how harmful it is. And I'm definitely going to teach my children to never, ever, ever do weed if they're underage. So, and by underage, I mean like late 20s is okay, but before that, not okay. Okay, so the live stream has been going on for 123 minutes. It sounds so long when you say it in minutes. So it's been so fun hanging out with you guys. My video on Wednesday is the theology of Catholicism and alcohol, which is going to be super cool. I'm going to be defining what abuse of alcohol is and talking about how it's grave matter and when that can be a mortal sin and all of that, and confession and all of that. So really excited for that. Thank you for hanging out with me. Oh, Julie, this is, I want to read this. The effects of marijuana are not well studied because of the way it is classified in the US. It is not studied like prescription pharmaceuticals. Yeah. And so when the bill does pass, it's gonna take a long time. Like the FDA will have to study it and everything. So yeah, but definitely in our lifetimes, we'll probably be able to get it prescribed. But honestly, like psychiatric drugs work a lot better. That's why we use them. They work very well. And people just haven't tried enough drugs. Like you shouldn't, enough psychiatric drugs. You shouldn't just give up after trying one. You should try for like 5 years before giving up and resorting to weed. That's my perspective, which is correct because there's hundreds of different combinations of combining all the drugs in different dosages. So I hope that convinces you to not do medical marijuana for bipolar. Also, marijuana triggers manic episodes. So going through life, you already have a chance of spiking into a manic episode. If you smoke weed, higher chance of being hospitalized and going to a psych ward because you go into mania and psychosis. So that's why I will never touch weed, just because I don't want to go into psychosis and be hospitalized in a psych ward. So I love you guys so much. Thank you for hanging out with me. I will see you next Saturday night, and I'll see you in my video on Wednesday. Bye. I love you guys so much.